Well, hello there. So this is our last module that deals with market failures, and this one is extra practice module 76, and it's all about public goods and common resources and that kind of thing. Your book doesn't talk about merit goods, and that won't appear on the exam. I just think that they're valuable for you to understand, so that's why they're in the lecture. But this section talks a lot about public goods and common resources. So for number one, check your understanding. Let's see. For each of the following, indicate whether it's excludable, rivalrous, and what kind of good it is. A public space such as a park. So this is non-rival and non-excludable. And we would say a public good. Public good. That's the definition of them, is when they're both of those things. B, cheese burrito. That is rivalrous. I eat the burrito, you may not. And it's excludable. If you do not pay for the burrito, you cannot eat the burrito. So therefore, it is a private good, the exact opposite. C, information from a website that's password protected. So this is artificially scarce because it is non-rivalrous. If you get on there, that's fine, but it is excludable. So one person's consumption doesn't affect someone else's consumption directly, but you can exclude people from it, so we call them artificially scarce. Artificially scarce. D, publicly announced information about the path of an incoming hurricane. That would be non-rival and non-excludable. And so we'd call that a public good. Okay, now let's take a look at number two. Which of the goods will be provided by private producers without government intervention, which will not be explained? This one and this one, because you can exclude. That's really what drives the market, is if you can't exclude somebody from consuming it without paying, then you have free riders. So you have the problem of common resources have free riders, because you have people who show up and they're like, I'm going to consume this thing, and even though it's rivalrous, they'll consume it, and they'll consume it without paying. So that's a free rider. And likewise, you have public goods that have free riders where you're like, there isn't a way to exclude them, and so people will consume it without paying, and so that's a free rider. So the only ones where a market will provide it is if you can exclude. So that's number two. Multiple choice. Number one. Let's take a look here. Go over. Which of the following are always non-rivalrous in consumption? Non-rivalrous in consumption. That would be, always non-rivalrous would be public goods. Okay. Number two, the free rider problem occurs, I just talked about this, in the case of common resources. We do know that. Not artificially scarce, not private goods, because it's only if they're not excludable. Motorcycles are private goods, so the correct answer is B, common resources. Three, public goods are sometimes provided through which of the following? Voluntary, sure, some people do that. Individual, that's the same. The government, yeah, sure, all of them. E. So I mean, sometimes we have one and two. It's, voting and things like that. But market provision of a public good will lead to not enough of it. Inefficiently low production, D. Number five, overuse of a common resource can be reduced. Well, you could tax it. You could, so A, you could regulate it. Yeah, we could license it. Sure. Assignment price. Yeah, so E, all of the above. There we go. Not too shabby. Free response number two. Identify and explain the two characteristics shared by every public good. I feel like I'm repeating myself. Non-rivalrous and non-excludable. B, suppose a new resident moves to the community that purchases a public good for the benefit of every member of the community. What's the additional cost of providing it to the new community member? Nothing. None, because it's a public good. Like there isn't, that's kind of a weird way to explain that. So like, think about it in the analogous situation would be like, if I go and have a kid, what's the additional cost to society of providing national defense to that kid? Well, once you've already built it and once you're already doing it, adding an additional consumer doesn't matter because they're not rivalrous. So maybe we say because it's not rivalrous. So like tornado sirens are a good example. Like whether you have 1 or 5 families listening to it, it doesn't matter. You can put another family that listens to it. It's not rivalrous, so it doesn't cost anything more to provide the tornado siren to those families. Hopefully that helped you. See you next time.